You know that little card in your wallet? The one that's given you freedom to hop on any bus, visit friends, go shopping, head to appointments, all without spending a penny? Well, I need to talk to you about something that's just been announced, and it affects every single person over 70 who relies on their bus pass. Now, before you panic, let me be clear. This isn't about taking your pass away entirely. But what's happening in 2025 is going to change how some of you use it. And honestly, a lot of people have no idea this is coming. I only found out myself last week, and I thought, I need to share this immediately because this affects millions of us. Here's the thing. These changes could mean the difference between keeping your full travel freedom or finding yourself suddenly restricted in ways you never expected. And depending on where you live, the impact could be quite different. Some areas are being hit harder than others. I've spent the last few days digging into the official announcements, reading through the government documents, and I'm going to break it all down for you in plain English. No confusing jargon, no bureaucratic rubbish, just the facts you actually need to know. Whether you use your bus pass every day or just occasionally, whether you're already 70 or approaching it soon, this affects you. And more importantly, there are things you can do right now to make sure you're not caught off guard. So here's what we're covering today. Exactly what's changing, why they're making these changes, who's going to feel it most, and, this is the important bit, what steps you can take to protect your travel privileges. I've also got some insider tips that most people won't tell you about alternative options if you're worried about being affected. But before we dive in, do me a quick favor. If this information is helpful to you, give this video a like. It really helps more seniors find this important information. Now, let's talk about what's actually happening with your bus pass. Alright, so let's get straight into what's actually happening here. Because I know you're probably sitting there thinking, just tell me what's changed. And I completely understand that feeling. We've all gotten used to having our bus passes work a certain way. And when someone starts talking about changes, it naturally makes us a bit nervous. So here's the situation. For years now, if you're over 60 in England, you've been entitled to free off-peak bus travel anywhere in the country. It's been one of those brilliant benefits that genuinely makes a difference to people's lives. I've spoken to so many of you who've told me how much it means to be able to visit family, get to medical appointments, do your shopping, or just get out of the house without worrying about the cost. It's not just about the money, though that certainly matters. It's about independence and staying connected to your community. Now, what's happening in 2025 is that several local councils are making adjustments to their concessionary travel schemes. And this is where it gets a bit complicated, because it's not a single national change that affects everyone in exactly the same way. Different areas are implementing different measures, which means your experience might be quite different from your neighbors if they live in a different council area. The most significant change that's causing concern is that some councils are looking at restricting the times when you can use your pass. Now, I know what you're thinking, but I already can only use it off-peak. And you're right, but the definition of what counts as off-peak is shifting in some places. Some areas are extending the morning restriction, so instead of being able to travel from 9 o'clock in the morning, you might have to wait until 9:30 or even 10 o'clock. And in the evening, some councils are bringing the cut-off time earlier, which means if you're planning an evening out or coming back from visiting someone, you might find yourself having to pay. Why are they doing this? Well, and I'm not making excuses for them here. I'm just explaining the reasoning they're giving. It comes down to money, as these things so often do. Local councils are under enormous financial pressure. Their budgets have been squeezed year after year, and they're having to make difficult decisions about where to allocate funds. The concessionary travel scheme costs councils a significant amount of money because they have to reimburse the bus companies for every journey taken using a free pass. With more people living longer, which is wonderful of course, and more people eligible for passes, those costs keep going up. But here's what really bothers me about this, and I want to be honest with you about how I feel. These changes disproportionately affect people who rely most heavily on public transport. If you don't drive or can't afford to run a car, your bus pass isn't just a nice perk, it's a lifeline. It's how you maintain your independence. And when councils start restricting when you can use it, they're essentially restricting when you can live your life freely. Want to get to a hospital appointment that's scheduled for 9:15? You might now have to pay. Need to get home from your daughter's house at 7 in the evening? That might cost you too. There's another change that's flying a bit under the radar, and not every council is doing this. but it's worth knowing about. Some areas are considering introducing a small administration charge for issuing or renewing bus passes. Now, we're not talking about huge amounts. It might be £5 or £10, but it's the principle that matters. This was supposed to be a free benefit, and suddenly there's a cost attached to it. It might not sound like much, but for people on fixed incomes, every pound counts. And more than that, it feels like the beginning of something bigger, doesn't it? First it's a small admin fee, then maybe it becomes a larger fee, and before you know it, the whole system has changed beyond recognition. Now, I want to talk about something else that's emerging from all of this, and it's actually quite concerning. Some councils are also tightening up the eligibility criteria in other ways. There's talk in certain areas about means testing the benefit, which would mean that not everyone over the qualifying age would automatically get a pass. Instead, you'd have to prove that you need it based on your income or savings. This hasn't been widely implemented yet, but it's being discussed, and that's something we all need to keep an eye on. What does all this mean for you practically? Well, if you're someone who uses your bus pass regularly, you need to check with your local council about what specific changes are coming to your area. And this is really important. Don't assume that what I'm telling you applies exactly to your situation, because every council is different. Some aren't making any changes at all. Others are implementing quite significant restrictions. You need to get the information that's relevant to where you live. Here's my advice, and I really hope you'll take this seriously. First, visit your local council's website or give them a call and ask specifically about changes to the concessionary travel scheme in 2025. Get the details in writing if you can. Find out exactly when you'll be able to use your pass and whether there are any new restrictions or costs. Second, if these changes are going to cause you genuine hardship, make your voice heard. Councils do listen to feedback, especially when lots of people are raising the same concerns. Write to your local councillor, attend council meetings if they're open to the public, or join local groups that advocate for seniors' rights. And speaking of making your voice heard, if you're finding this information valuable and you think other people need to know about it too, please subscribe to the channel and share this video with your friends and family. The more people who understand what's happening, the better equipped we all are to deal with these changes together. It really does make a difference when we look out for each other. Now, let's talk about what you can do if you're going to be negatively affected by these changes. If the new restrictions mean you'll have to pay for certain journeys, it's worth looking into whether there are any discount cards or alternative schemes available in your area. Some bus companies offer their own loyalty cards or discounted tickets for frequent travelers. It's not the same as having a completely free pass, I know, but it might soften the blow a little bit. Another thing to consider is adjusting your schedule where possible. I know that's not always feasible. You can't exactly tell your doctor to move your appointment just because you want to use your free bus pass. But for things like shopping trips or social visits, you might be able to plan around the restricted times. I realize that sounds like you're having to organize your life around these new rules, and that's frustrating, but sometimes we have to be practical about these things. There's also the question of what this means for the future. Are we looking at the beginning of a complete overhaul of the concessionary travel system? It's hard to say for certain, but I think it's wise to be prepared for the possibility of further changes down the line. The financial pressures on local government aren't going away, and unfortunately, benefits for seniors often end up being targeted when cuts need to be made. But here's the thing I want you to remember, and this is really important. You have rights, and you have a voice. These benefits weren't just given to us out of the goodness of someone's heart. They were fought for by previous generations who understood the importance of ensuring that older people could maintain their dignity and independence. And it's up to us now to stand up and make sure those hard-won benefits aren't eroded without our voices being heard.